Normally, nothing good comes from the sentence that starts with a Florida man, dot, dot, dot. But my next guest is one Florida man that the entire Southeastern United States looks to every year, June through October, hurricane season. A self-proclaimed armchair expert, he has become the no BS resource for weather news all year long as the founder of Mike's Weather page on Facebook and SpaghettiModels.com. His page has been accredited by NOAA, FEMA, the Hurricane Hunters, local meteorologists, and the Weather Channel, but he's also collected a few critics along the way. Today we're going to get to the backstory of how he went from hurricane enthusiast to nearly 1 million followers on his Facebook fan page. Florida native, tropics tracker, not as drunk as people think. Mike Boylan, everyone. Welcome.
Not yet. 5 o'clock somewhere.
That's right. That's right. They don't call the drink a hurricane for nothing, right?
That's the first thing I always look at. You got to get it. I don't care how fruity it is. I always buy the hurricane drink.
I don't think I've ever had one.
Well, there you go. They also have one called the La Nina.
Really?
And El
Okay.
Nino. I love tropical drinks.
Noted. I'll have to remember that. And speaking of drinking, the drunk donkey is a part of your logo. I have to ask, why is there an ass and why is he an alcoholic?
I actually have it on today.
Yay! I love
first
it.
Day. It's a silly story, but when I was tracking Hurricane Florence, I was called a drunk donkey basically on air from a real meteorologist. And so my fans flocked to that. I got a video of it. And the next thing you know, my buddy, we designed an image and then I sold a couple thousand shirts. And now it's become our Drunk Donkey Nation call sign. And, a lot of our fans drink, and I have ABC Fine Wine and Spirits as a sponsor now, and so it all fits. So what other job can you be drunk and say you're drunk and still get paid?
I think that's a good thing. I love how it was an insult that you turned into a brand. I think that's the ultimate revenge.
It just happened, and it just fits all of us that sit around and think we know, and Monday morning quarterbacks. So I take it very serious, though, and I think the fans that I have know that. But we do have a lot of fun along the way.
Oh, you definitely do, and that's how I found you. Was I'm originally from Nebraska, and I've never experienced a big hurricane here yet. So when we had more severe weather, I was kind of freaked out. We don't really have TV per se. So I was like, there's no TV to watch. How do I figure out, where to get the weather from? And immediately someone said Mike's Weather page. And so since then, I've been a follower. And yeah, you have a very open access approach to weather science for everyone. And you can figure out what is going on in your area. But also, I find myself learning things along the way about how hurricanes work.
Cool. Yeah, I learn every day. Trust me. And when I ramble on with my Facebook lives, I sound lost sometimes because I'm learning. It's and tropics will always keep you guessing. It doesn't matter how smart the science is. They'll always throw a fast one. So it's fun. You never know what you're going to get. Like a box of chocolate.
Exactly. There's someone here that says nature doesn't read the handbooks. So whatever you learn in school, that it doesn't always matter. So how did Mike's Weather page get started?
I'm a Florida native. Born and raised here. And in 2004, we had a very active season. And it started with Hurricane Charlie. And we were right in the cone. And I was obsessed with spaghetti models and obsessed with graphics. And I couldn't find them anywhere. And I'm always Googling and looking. And so I was learning a little bit of HTML going to college and said, I'll just make a page. And I called it Mike's Weather page. And I shared it with friends and family and started throwing more models and links. And every time I thought something was cool, I'd add it to the site. That way I didn't have to go anywhere looking for it. I was like, I have one-stop shop. That's what Jim Cantori on the Weather Channel, he actually likes our site. He's called it the one-stop shop for tropics. And Stephanie Abrams, too. So I love them. But that's kind of what it is still today. It's grown. But it's one page to just go to and get everything you need tropical and not have to go look around for it. And that's kind of how it evolved. I mean, it was never meant to be a business. It just kind of happened.
Sometimes that's how the best businesses happen.
Yeah, and I'm not really, I'm a blogger like yourself. People like to hear me talk and hear me think, and I let the experts do the real forecasts, and I share all kinds of scenarios, and it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to it. It's a weird addiction.
And is this your primary job, or do you have another position as well?
Yeah, I do website design. I've done a lot of stuff like that through the years. I took a degree. I got a degree in marketing, so I'm always figuring out ways. I've always been self-employed basically, but this is definitely turned into a summer job, and I have some sponsors, and they appreciate what I do, and I do spend countless hours. So it's my summer job. Kind of like Jimmy Buffett jokes, it's his summer job is jamming the tropics. His summer job is jamming music. Mine's jamming tropics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it kind of brings up a good point is, there's summertime, party time, hurricane culture. It's really specific here. And that was something that I wasn't aware of either, but I could relate to being from Nebraska because tornadoes, we were not really like in the tornado alley per se, but we were close enough that we got weather. The sky would turn green, hail, weird stuff like that. And it became like you had a tradition or a ritual around tornadoes. So tell me about hurricane culture for those that don't know, because not all my listeners are in Florida or in the South or even in the United States.
Well, first off, if you get hit by a hurricane, it's not fun. But there is this weird obsession with people tracking storms, and there's this weird obsession that people want storms to come their way, and you can't not deny it. Growing up, turning on the Weather Channel, I would get a little anxious to see the tropical update, and when the cone got closer to me, you kind of get excited, and nobody wants damage and destruction, but there are hurricane parties. I mean, that's a big thing here in Florida. It's the number one thing. There's jokes, there's memes, there's how Floridians and that's all the states. It's just they have hurricane parties. People get drunk. It's crazy, but I don't know. Some want you to take it serious, and others kind of enjoy the thrill of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And being local, everybody's got that little tough side, redneck in you. Like I'm going to ride it out. And, so I don't ever advise it. I don't ever give evacuation warnings, but it is that culture, like you said. I mean, Publix, all the local stores have hurricane. We have a disaster tax-free this week in Florida, so everybody gets amped up for the season.
Yeah, and
you can make it.
It's almost like putting that nervous, fearful energy to a party use, So hurricane party, when I moved here, I did not even know what a hurricane party was. So, explain what that means.
People just sit around and make that a reason to have a party and drink. I mean,
grill.
You lose power.
Yeah.
You're not working, school's out, so it's just that. It's kind of like a snow day. We have hurricane days in Florida, and of course for golf. Don't mean to always say Florida, but that's just my home. But we have North Carolina, all up and down the east, and we have a lot of fans all around Bermuda, and they all. I don't think the party is probably as big in the Caribbean and other areas as it is in the South. I think it's just a Southern thing.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I was asking some of my listeners what their favorite hurricane traditions are or hurricane rituals, and a few of them said, to leave.
Yeah,
but
a lot of people leave, and that a lot of people evacuate, but the ones that stick around, and the hurricane parties are fun on tropical storms and weaker stuff. But you figure all the beaches and places. It's exciting. It's an exciting time. I don't know. I love watching squall lines roll in and sunshine and rain and a little bit of unknown.
Yeah, well, you're right. There is something about watching the power of nature take its effect. And so when it's been safe, to do so, my husband and I have gone to the beach and just to see the big, powerful waves and, being a surfer also, there's that tradition of right before the storm and right after the storm, there's usually a groundswell that we can catch and have fun with. And, you know, he's gone out in the bigger stuff. That's above my pay grade. I don't do any of that, but there's that part of it too. And then there's the hacks around hurricane culture, like fill your bathtub up with water, because you might need to pour it into the toilet to flush it if you lose power. Right. Stuff like that. Do you have a favorite hurricane ritual?
Well, I've rode out Irma. Irma was pretty exciting for me because I'm still doing my live, but the storm's coming right toward us a couple years ago, and you know we boarded up the windows, and it wasn't really a ritual, but I was out there every hour, like just loving it, like streaming live and out there, and my neighbors thought I was crazy. So I guess my ritual is I go for the storm, and I bring my daughters. We got some cool video with her over the years, standing in park benches here in Oldsmar where the water's over the bench, you know, because of surge. So I guess my ritual is like a lot of people flock to the parks to see stuff. You know, we had a weird phenomenon here with Irma where the storm was to our south and it blew all the water out of Tampa Bay. So that was the headline. Like everybody was going outside and there was no water because the water got shoved out. So we all flocked to the camp. You know, we were walking out there half a mile offshore because it was reverse surge.
Yeah. And
that was a fun, you know, stories. That's you know, those are just fun memories looking back, and it says they have a name. People always can remember, you know, Hurricane Betsy, and you know the older generation, like my mom and dad, they remember the names, you know, and you always have memories attached to hurricanes. So it definitely defines you in moments in your life. So that, you know, that's kind of what makes it.
Yeah, they're history makers for sure. And it's funny that you mentioned about the water being sucked out of Tampa Bay, because my husband and I the other night watched something on National Geographic, or I can't remember what show, but one of those nature shows, and it was talking about like stories from the Bible and the parting of the Red Sea, and just scientifically how that might have been possible, but it might not be in the location we all thought. Long story short, it was kind of what you just talked about. It was like a reverse surge, wind power phenomenon. Do you ever go back and look at the historical weather events in the past and kind of like deconstruct what happened?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people that compare hurricanes, current storms to prior storms. And I guess there's a lot of data that supports the fact that you can compare past storms sometimes with modern day storms, you know, and that's, I believe every storm's a little different, you know, every weather pattern's a little different. So I kind of get lost on now versus, you know, 30, 40 years ago. But there are similarities, you know, there's, you know, one interesting fact is every Category 5 landfall in the States was only a tropical storm 3 days out.
Really?
Yeah, and that was Michael, obviously the most recent. Now that's 5s. There's only been a handful of 5s, but Andrew. So those are kind of interesting stats that I like to see, is the what if and storms peaking at the wrong time. And they do ramp up. So those are stuff you can look back at. And then this year, for example, the Gulf has had a lot of energy in it. We've seen a lot of blobs and squalls. I joke on my Facebook, we call them blobs and squalls, but they've blown up a lot. And I'm using that for early season systems in the Gulf, and that's been the pattern we've seen. So I do look back. You know, you just start to get a gut feeling on things, you know, and you compare things. And Florence was the one that went north up against a lot of variables, and it still turned into a Category 4 out in the Atlantic. So I use that data to say, hey, you know, this one did it, even though everybody said it couldn't do it. So those are things I look back on in storms in my recent history more than anything. Just little observations that I'm starting to learn now that I'm really paying attention.
Right. Yeah. Once you learn what to look for, and when you look at those weather models and understand what they're saying, do you have any predictions?
Right. Predictions? Well, yeah. Well, like real quick on the Florence situation, is everybody, almost 99% of all meteorologists said it was going to curve off and go to open sea. and it hit a high pressure, and it ended up coming to Florence or Charleston area, and it wasn't supposed to do that. Michael wasn't expected to be a Category 5. The early NHC cones had it as a tropical storm. So that's the one thing I'm learning and let people know. What if, like, just because past says it can't, it can, and it's proven right to look at all the variables. But this year, for example, we've already seen a couple named storms. I know this is going to play later, so we might even be up to who the heck knows. But all the conditions this year are definitely favorable for tropics, and that's unfortunate. The long-term predictors, which I used to not believe in long-range modeling, I was like everybody else, like, them guys can't make a call, they'll change your mind, blah, 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 blah. Well, now that I start to know more, we're not going to be in an El Nino setup, which a La Nina setup or a neutral setup means we'll have more Atlantic activity, those type of things. The water's warmer. There's just long-range indicators that are showing a more juicy, moist environment. And just those couple things alone are going to bring the average a little higher. So that, I do believe we'll have a pretty active season. Whether or not they hit anybody, we can have them all just end up in the Atlantic and never turn. But
that's a good point.
Unfortunately, we'll have some.
Yeah. Do you have any specific thoughts on hurricane mitigation as far as like engineered structures, or like in Norway, they had this problem with water freezing in their, like, preventing their import export. And so they use these pipes to bring up the warmer water in air bubbles to break up the ice. And now in the Gulf, our warmer water is on the surface, obviously, because that's what a hurricane needs, right, to do its thing. And the colder water is below. So there's some talk that if we used that technology to bring up cold air bubbles and cool the surface of the water, that we could either like de-escalate the hurricane strength, divert its path, or do something. But I kind of wonder if there's like a butterfly effect.
Well, I know there was an experiment. And I think it was in the 50s or 60s. They did try mercury or to that effect. They injected it into a storm. So there was a time that the Air Force tried it, and like I said, I don't know the exact specifics, but there was, because I have people send similar stuff, so I go and look, and this was a couple years ago, and I was like, oh my goodness. Well, then they dropped it right away because I guess the storm still ended up strong. But like you said, the butterfly effect. Of course, there's chemtrail theorists out there and HARP and different things. I mean, you hear climate change. It's been a huge factor of exploding systems. Andrew again was a Cat 5 tropical storm 3 days out. So I'm a big believer. Things cycle. We're just in this pattern right now. I mean, obviously everything's getting warmer. You can't deny that. So that is going to aid in a little more activity weather-wise. But as far as cooling things, I don't know. We've seen storms develop where they shouldn't develop. So there's, like you said, I think there's more variables in line than we can probably just can't pick one of those. And just like I mentioned, Florence last year was in the deep Atlantic. Should have never been a hurricane, but it turned over Cat 4 over waters that shouldn't have supported it. So, like you said, I think there's a lot more to learn to mess with Mother Nature.
Yeah, and like we said, nature doesn't read the science books.
No, correct. And no, and there's more people living on the coast now. There's stats about that. So obviously, there's more interest, more people affected. And you can have a slow-moving tropical system like last year. Imelda was not even a tropical storm in Texas, and they had 20, 30 inches of rain. You know, so it doesn't take a Category 5 to cause devastation. It can just take a slow-moving tropical system to do more damage.
And it's tough when you have to evacuate. I haven't had to do it yet, but it's a nerve-wracking thing. And I will admit that some of the inaccurate weather reporting, not on your part, but on other media maybe not reporting accurate information, I think it's made me a little cavalier to any sort of like doomsday message. Have you seen that with your audience?
Well, I see it. It's this the cry wolf thing, I mean, how many times are you going to evacuate before you just say hell with it? And Charlie, 2004, right? Everybody evacuated west coast of Florida. They went to Orlando, and then guess where Charlie went? It hit Category 1, still is in Orlando, and they had more damages in Orlando than the people on the coast. So where do you run? And it becomes a nightmare for people to get back in. And I understand it. I understand your first responders can't go out X amount of winds, fire trucks and whatnot. So they want people to be away in case they need help. And I get that. And I think that's the big reason for evacuations is to prevent the need for help if needed. But I think the old school, locals are never going to evacuate. I mean, there's and the good stat, really the best stat about deaths, if there is one, is that 90% plus are water related. So the wind does very little damage or death percentages on statistics side. It's all water related. So you can get away from the water. The water just doesn't show up. So I mean, if you have to get out of the way, at least the wind is proven not to be as deadly as water.
I didn't. So you're saying most of the deaths surrounding like weather incidents are water related?
Right. Well, I think there's 50% or so surge. That's a big part. But then you have inland flooding is a large part. You don't realize inland flooding is from the tropical rains. So you have a double whammy there with the water. And then of course they put other stuff in there like swimming. I mean, rip currents. I mean, people shouldn't be out swimming, but those are percentages of the deaths.
Yeah.
And I think it's upwards of 90 to 90. I know it's over 90%, close to 95% water related deaths over X amount of years. And of course, Katrina was a large part of that with the floods and the levees. But still, the wind wasn't the storyline. So
does this mean that your new hurricane storm chasing golf cart buggy is going to be like equipped with some, Navy SEAL flotation accessories?
We'll have some paddles. I'll have some paddles. We have those signs all around town here in Tampa about the worst case scenario, and about a mile from our house, I always take a picture of my daughter underneath it because it shows it's 6 to 7 foot above where we're at. So that's really my only fear ever would be a surge event, but I'm going to ride everything else out. I mean, the newer home constructions are pretty darn good. Most people are getting impact windows, so I still have my trusty plywood.
Yeah,
I'm not going to leave.
Well, we've got some cylinder brick homes on Pensacola Beach that have proven their place. So,
I've heard about that. Yeah.
You just basically open the front door. Well, there's a round one, there's the dome home, but there's all these little single-story cylinder brick homes, and you just open the front door, open the back door, let everything wash out, and then you come home, and there's no you just replace it.
Start fresh.
Yeah, basically.
Like my kind of. Yeah, you get new home.
Yeah. So if you come to Pensacola, then you'll be a part of our strange traditions that we have here.
Yeah, well, I guarantee in the next few years you're going to have action your way. I mean, one way or another, you're going to be even this early season stuff. We're watching. You'll be on the edge of your seats.
I know. I'm a little nervous. Okay, so for people like me who are a little nervous, let's wrap up with some hurricane preparedness tips. We already talked about putting the water in the bathtub. What are some other pro tips since you're the guy that sits it out?
Yeah, well, we Red Cross did a cool little special here with our local news. It was really neat, and they gave me a kit. So I have a link on my kit. There's definitely. It's a good idea to have a hurricane kit, and I didn't believe in it. I didn't have one, but then the more I thought about it, it's batteries, stuff you don't think about, cash. ATMs aren't going to work when there isn't power, so you need cash, gas, toilet paper. Yeah, toilet paper, but that's a huge part in your kit. And lately, I've been showing people, and they really get fascinated by it. But you need to have some sort of power converter. Now that everybody lives on cell phones. So the best thing you can buy is a 12-volt power inverter that you can plug in your cigarette lighter and it'll charge USB. Otherwise, you're going to have no way to charge your cell phone. So that's a big thing. And then weather radio is huge. still NOAA weather radio. They're cheap. Public sells them all your stores. And then I even go as far as having a 110-volt converter for my car, if you don't have one, that you can at least plug in low wattage household, appliances or whatnot. So a 110 converter for your car, and a lot of backup battery packs. Because I'm telling you, the number one thing you need to rely on if you lose power is going to be your phones. Because most of the time, cell phone coverage doesn't drop because they have generators. So you'll still have internet access, but if you don't have any way to keep your stuff charged, that's the bigger thing.
That is the bigger thing.
Having power stinks. I mean, and of course, they got the food plans. Gallon of water a day per person, like you mentioned, the bathtubs. And those are good. That's good advice. But there are some great websites I have linked on my page from NOAA and National Weather Service about what to do to prepare, and pets. They always tell you that good point is to have pictures of your pets with you, because if you ever lose your pet, you have proof to show people. So that's a good one people don't realize.
Yeah, I knew you'd be the guy for the tips, because literally I've never thought of any of those tips, and I have researched some hurricane prep, so thank you so much. I have so enjoyed this excuse to get to know you. I really appreciate everything that you do and the information that you put out there. Are there any weather thoughts that you want to leave us with before we wrap it up?
Weather thoughts. I don't. I guess the number one word I hear is hype. A lot of people get caught up in the hype, and in local news and national news really hypes these things up. So I guess fear is a big part of the hurricane season, and people really get nervous. So, hurricanes, you have a lot of time to prepare, and there's really no reason to worry with it. It's not like a tornado. It's not going to come out of nowhere. So you have plenty of time to prepare. It's not as bad as they make it sound sometimes. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, the number one compliment I get is that I don't hype. So you can't get wrapped up in one model over another model. You're going to see things shared on social media, and the National Weather Service is scared to death about it, because every time Dick and Harry, like myself, can do a weather page, and I can pick and choose what I want to show people. And there's models that are scary that show a landfall in Tampa, but then 6 hours later it won't even be there. But that image now is being shared all around the internet and getting likes, and people get addicted to likes. So you get these kids and stuff that will share it, and they get excited because it gets likes, and then it gets in everybody's feed. They get nervous. So just be careful who you listen to, and that's a big thing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. That's solid. Well, I will definitely put your information linked in the episode description and in all the suspect places. Thank you again. It's been a
welcome.
pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you. Awesome. We'll talk to you again soon.